item under item B3, which is board members' reports. And that's just an addition of the discussion regarding our linkage meeting that's prior to the first regular board meeting in November. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Accept a second.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We'll be able to refresh our screens, I'm sure, soon. But in the meantime, I'm going to move on to just ask if there's any public comment. Chris? All right. No public comment. So we're going to move on to item B2, pre-approved presentations to the board from community members, student groups, owners, or stakeholders. This is a presentation by the facility committee. So this is our first monthly update to the board. So Ryan, you can come up to the mic there and introduce yourself. I'm not sure everyone on the board knows you. The back of it, like the base of it, you push and hold. It's not on.
You have to hold it.
All right, my name is Ryan Frazier. I'm the chairman of the Facilities Committee, and I want to thank you for listening to me tonight. I'm here on behalf of the Facility Committee, based off our last meeting. What day was that? I can't remember, but our current status, it's been a rough week. Our current status is we're looking to get the ball rolling. We're trying to structure our school year and what we need to do to fulfill our duties. Our current duties, as you should know because you wrote it, but I'll refresh you. The purpose of the Othello School Board Facilities Advisory Committee will be to provide the board with options relating to both the short and long-term facility needs. The duties of this committee will be the following: develop a 5-year facilities plan based on the instructional vision of Othello School District, prioritize this plan for the most immediate needs to future needs, seek input from experts inside and outside the community to determine the fiscal impact of the needs that have been determined, and finally provide the board with at least 2 options that include the fiscal impact and the timeline for each option. So, you guys ready to hear what I need? All right, so what we need is, the biggest one is time. As you guys know, any teacher or anybody else there, is this kind of structure, doing this much work, it takes up a decent amount of time. Already as a chairman, I'm going, wow, this is more than I've been into. Just even tonight, I had stuff, and time's a big one. Experience in the field. We do have a few members on the committee that have some experience in this. I've dibble-dabbled in a little bit, but overall, we're a lot of greenhorns on there. And a scope and sequence, kind of a guidance and order to this. Since most of us have not done it, I've never completely ran a facility committee before. It would be nice to have some structure and kind of this is the order in which we need to do it from someone that's done it before. Deadlines, progress reports, and finally, the fine-tuning. So when we're all done with this, how's it look? Cross our T's and dots our I's. What we came up with based off our needs was our solution, which was to get a facilitator and have the committee choose from a few options based off the nominations within the committee. The duties of that facilitator would be to create a scope and sequence, basically a game plan for things we need to learn to meet our duties as the committee. Bring in experts if it benefits the committee, help structure the agenda, and lead or co-lead the meetings. So kind of take a little bit off the chairman's back and kind of help lead or co-lead. If he's not able to come, at least help with the structure. So I got a lesson plan in place. So why do we need this? As I mentioned in the beginning, we have a lack of experience on the board. We feel we need an expert, someone that's been through this process before or something like it that has developed plans in this area. It takes up a lot of time. Just here tonight, last week it took up a decent amount of time. And realistically, if someone's putting this much time in, there probably should be someone getting paid for it. Not saying I should, but maybe a facilitator. And that's about it. I'm welcoming any questions that you might have.
When you ask for a facilitator, do you mean someone from the committee or someone that is like an outside expert?
An outside expert. And
Okay.
one of them was Dax had agreed to kind of help us set up a game plan the last meeting. And so someone that's kind of outside to kind of go, all right, I don't have any dog in this fight. What do you want? This is how we're going to get there. And kind of not have an agenda in there. So someone outside would be preferable.
Okay. So are you suggesting DAX, or you're saying DAX would be an option?
I'd let the facility, we wanted to have a few nominations and see what the district maybe came up with, and maybe what some of our members came up with before we acted on picking a one. I don't want to speak for them.
I personally feel a facilitator would be great. I mentioned that when we first started the committee, that a facilitator would help this group get their feet on the ground and get going, and that's what they need.
Tony and Ryan can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think the discussion that Dax was having was that bringing in someone who is an architect and someone who might have some our current knowledge of our facilities might be a good idea. If you're looking for someone who could be completely unbiased, in fairness, I don't know if we brought in our architects who did all the work, if it would be completely unbiased. I think there's always going to be some advantages to, you know, but I do think they'd be professional, and as a committee, we could, well, hopefully, while they facilitate it, not be led by what their desires are, but instead what the committee desires. And in that, Dax brought up that it's possible we might actually be under contract with Architects West right now because of the work they did with the last bond, and also that they by the way, facilitated, Dax and Ed from Architects West facilitated our last bond in 2007 or 2006. And so they do it for no cost. Their hope is that they get the job. but
Architects
it doesn't
West does,
mean-
not DAX, right? Architects West does it at no cost, but I believe DAX charges something.
Oh, okay, I didn't catch that.
Your
part of it.
mic's not on, Tony, or,
It's turned
It
on.
was sounding like Dax was going to be a charged one, though, from what I had gathered.
That he would, okay.
It sounded like it.
So, one thing I know that Dr. Hirsch, I think, had Lisa get some information. Maybe you want to share with us what you found out about that part of it.
So one of the things we found out, well, I'll let you speak to it, Lisa.
This is actually one of our discussion items, but it seems like an appropriate time to talk about it.
technology's so fun.
There, test, okay. Actually, I did get a hold of Ed Champagne from Architects West. We are not currently under contract with them for anything other than the current projects, and really, they had all been finished, so we really don't have anything open with them at this point in time. Dax would be, he is a chargeable individual at this point in time. Ed would be an option, but I think the issues that you pointed out are, certainly things to consider as well, as far from Architects West, as to whether or not there'd be bias or whether or not they would be the ones to take it on from this point.
So Dax mentioned having to do is it an RFQ? If
That's
we
to get
if we use
to get an architect involved in the
If we-
process,
Yeah.
right?
In the actual process.
yeah, if we want to use an architect that will donate their time, that was my understanding. If you just want to pay an architect to come, that's different. But I don't know why we would pay an architect to come when we can do an RFQ and they come in the hopes they get the contract, they get paid later, just like others.
I think that in visiting with them, I think that some of the issues were really, what are we asking them to do? If we're asking them to come truly and just to give some input on putting together a project, I think that would be a gratis type of a thing. If we're asking them to come and facilitate, a committee's work over the course of a year, I don't know that would be a gratis type of a thing.
So one of the things that I don't believe was really brought up, but or determined by the committee, and one of the things we were hoping for by this meeting was a timeline. Where do you feel like the committee's at with a timeline?
We really haven't started hitting the ground running. So I don't know if we're even at the first point yet. I don't know if we're even at the starting line yet, because we haven't got our vision of where we're going yet.
So does the committee need more time to get back to the board on, with that task?
A little bit would be a good option.
Would the
But
board be okay with next
it-
monthly update, that we get that?
The
end
next
time?
monthly or next time we meet?
Well, they're gonna come back, the committee's gonna come back monthly for a report at their next report. This was supposed to be when they were share with us their timeline and end date, so it doesn't sound like they're ready. Is the board okay with extending that until the next monthly update? That's what I was asking.
The second meeting in November.
If that's what the committee
if
wants to
that's
do,
what
monthly
it takes,
update,
yeah.
yeah. They have two options each month to give us an update. I guess it's
Yeah.
up to them.
Ideally, that's where the expert would come in, someone like Dax that could kind of go, all right, here's your timeline for what you want to do.
What's the next deadline, if we were not able to go, if we're waiting for the second one in November or even the first, the December 15th deadline for February doesn't sound like that's even an option. So what's the next deadline for the next?
It
For,
was about the third week in February. That would be for a April or May. That was a May ballot. And then April for an August ballot. They're not all the same exact amount of time before the ballot, before you have to have the resolution done.
So it's usually about the next vote is when you have to have it in
Except
for,
for that August is a really early one. You have to have that 4 months early. You have to
Okay.
have that in April, I think, is what my memory was.
yeah, I think, for me, being on the committee, I think the sense of the committee is they want to take their time and not rush to try to rush something out to the public. They want to take their time and do it right. So my perception is this isn't something that they're going to figure out by February even.
So let me
As a
just read off
committee.
the dates for this coming year on that, on
Okay.
the resolution deadline. So we already know February, Tuesday, February 12th, or sorry, Friday, February 22nd is the last day to file a resolution for the April special election. I was thinking it was May for some reason. May then is May 10th, last day to file a resolution for the August primary election. And then August 6th, which is the actual day of the primary election, is also the last day to file a resolution for the November general election.
okay. I think that sounds reasonable to, being on one of those committees before, it takes a long time to understand what's even being asked.
Yeah, we have our mission, but it's still one of those like, well, how do we do it? Developing a scope and sequence, especially with kind of what I felt Dax was talking about, a scope and sequence kind of, I think will help dramatically with the timeline. And getting the ball running, or whoever we choose to help with that.
Where I'm not quite certain as a board member and as a committee member is what the process to get that facilitator would be. If we do an RFQ, my understanding is that could take much time where we might not have a facilitator till December. Because there's things you have to do to do all that properly. And with that, I don't know that the committee actually gets to choose. I think that there's, well, I guess the committee could choose and bring a recommendation back to the board. I take that back. So I think the board needs to determine how we want to make this facilitator happen.
Is there any other options besides the RFQ?
What do you think, Dr. Hurst?
So I know the district has been working with ESD 112 with Lori Obahidi. I'm not sure if you all remember her for the last bond. She has some recommendations for the district's behalf that we can certainly share with the committee. We're prepared to do that, and they would not require an RFQ. So there are options out there that we can present to the committee. The committee can decide.
So maybe in that situation, then you'd have a different facilitator that wouldn't be Dax or an architect, but then we could still possibly utilize an architect who has some knowledge of the district for specific questions or for expert. That may be what, okay.
Absolutely.
I got the sense that the discussion was around having the architect as the facilitator, but it sounds like that's more involved. Is that kind of what you thought too, Lisa?
That was what I gathered
I didn't completely follow all of it in that committee meeting to know that.
Yeah, the architect or just someone that can lead, kind of, I guess, co-lead it, you know, all right, Frazier, this is what you gotta do, or, hey, I'll be there this meeting, this is what we're gonna,
Well, there's people who are just good at keeping things on focus
yeah.
and moving along. And
I've
I
got
can see
6
value
lesson
in that.
plans a day. It's hard
So-
to get it.
So I guess, I'm in favor of allowing the committee to pursue facilitators. I would request, if we had to make a motion or whatever, but I'd request that before any money's spent, that be approved through the board. Once the committee knows who they want and how much they're gonna charge, then I think it needs to come back to the board before that's done.
So, if it's feasible, what would the board's feeling be about maybe bringing a few names of just facilitators that aren't necessarily architects? We know they're gonna have to be paid. And they could list what their cost is, and the committee can take that into consideration and then come up with a recommendation for the board at the following, so I think they're gonna meet just 1 week before we do. Bring that recommendation to the board, maybe then for the board to make a decision on. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I'm just not comfortable making an approval as a board and not knowing what it's gonna cost.
What do you think about that, Ryan? Is that something?
Yeah, that sounds good. Maybe
Be
like
on your
a,
agenda
maybe like
for
a
next
cost and a list of duties.
And their skills, I think, would be
Yeah,
essential.
cost, list of duty and skills and,
Because every different facilitator is going to have different specializations and those
yeah.
kinds of things.
It
So-
sounds like the ESD can help us with some recommendations on that.
Right.
Is the board
Absolutely.
comfortable with that?
yeah, I was gonna say OSPI, ESD, there's a decent amount of them out there.
Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for letting me speak, and I appreciate I guess we'll probably get to know each other as the year goes on a little bit better.
Thank you.
I'm sure we're looking forward to the next meeting when you got some dates and you really are, the ball's rolling well. So I know you want to get there, and I'm sure the rest of the committee wants to get there too, so. Okay, anything else from the board? Any other questions for Ryan? Thank you, Ryan.
Thank you. Do I need to shut this off?
Good.
You can just
It'll
leave it
just
on.
turn off in a
It'll
minute.
take care of itself. Usually when the next person sits down, as soon as they sit down.
Right.
Any other general comments or questions on that from the board before we move on? Okay, and then we move on to item B3, board member reports. We will start with our legislative report.
So since it is voting time, everyone that's a voter gets lots of interesting things in the mail saying vote this way, vote that way. And so I felt like this was a legislative issue. I always read my voter's pamphlet as to what I'm actually reading and don't always believe the information that comes in the mail because it's paid for by groups or individuals that have agendas. So, initiative measure 1631, there's only 2 that I really wanted to hit on today. And this one would affect us both as individuals and as a school district. So this one is, and this is just some of the stuff directly out of the voter information, the voter's pamphlet. There would be fees charged based on the amount of carbon content in fossil fuels. Beginning January 1st, 2020, the pollution fee is set at $15 per metric ton of carbon content. The fee increases by $2 per metric ton each year and is also adjusted for inflation each year. The $2 annual increases continue until the state's existing greenhouse gas reduction goal for 2035 is met, and the state is on pace and likely to meet the 2050 greenhouse gas reduction goal. At that time, the pollution fee will be fixed, except for the annual inflation adjustments. And then the group that is put together that has the Public Oversight Board, after administrative costs are covered, those funds, which they estimate to be $2.3 billion within the first 5 years, 70% would go to clean air and clean energy investments, 25% for clean water and healthy forest investments, and 5% for healthy community investments. And then the information that came in the mail, the top 5 contributors are Phillips 66, BP America, Endeavor, American Fuel and Petrochemical Manufacturers, and U.S. Oil and Refining Company. So gas is paying for people to say no. So I did do a little bit of research in terms of the district's cost. Diesel fuel emits 22.38 pounds of carbon dioxide for every gallon. About 22,000 pounds of CO2 equals 1 metric ton. So that's about 100 gallons of diesel equals 1 ton, which is equivalent of $15 extra per year per 100 gallons of diesel. Do we have any idea how much?
In taxes, is that what you're saying, that we pay? if
That,
this
yes, that would change in taxes, if this were to pass. Any idea on how much diesel we use a year for buses?
No, I can find that. I can find
Okay,
it. It's substantial.
right, I'm sure. So that was something that was, I thought was interesting, and it would go up $2 every year for that 100 gallons of diesel plus inflation. And then, just for a reference as well, a gallon of gasoline, for those of us that do not drive diesel, is 19.64 pounds per pounds of carbon dioxide per gallon, and an average car in the U.S. does 6 tons per year. My car's not average, because we drive around town. We don't go out very often, but I'm sure other vehicles are way above average. So just some interesting things to look at, equivalency that way. Any questions on 1631 that I
anything
could
about
possibly
propane?
not answer? So there are things that are, there are some things that are exempt from this law. If it's a facility that's legally bound to close by 2025 or comply with certain emission standards by 2025, they are exempt. Anything that uses fossil fuels or carbon. So propane comes from petroleum, correct?
I just wonder if you had stats on what,
It,
if there's less tax on propane overall. I'm just curious. I know some districts are switching to propane powered.
so
buses.
I did a search on how much diesel emissions, and I'm sure we could do a search on propane. So that's how I came up with those numbers. No idea on the propane numbers. So then 1634 is much
I
shorter.
don't want to make a comment.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
In all fairness,
Yes?
the yes vote is being heavily funded by one individual that is worth more than all those oil companies put together, and he wants to eliminate all cows according to his video that I watched, because cows are the third
Cows
largest
are the-
contributor outside the United States and China. Methane gas, just so you know.
Okay.
Throwing it out there. Look it up, BillGates.com.
Okay. Very good to know. It's always
Not
good
very
to
popular
hear
around
all
these parts.
sides. I bet not. Okay, then 1634. So I only received 2 1631 things in the mail. I got on 1634, and your houses are likely to be the same. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And these are paid for. The top 5 contributors are Washington Food Industry Association, the Coca-Cola Company, PepsiCo, Keurig, Dr. Pepper, and Red Bull North America. Which I was like, what? How does that apply? So then, if adopted, 1634 would prevent local governments from imposing or collecting any new tax, fee, or other assessment on certain grocery items after January 15th, 2018. Counties, cities, and towns are considered local governments. This does not include alcoholic beverages, marijuana products, or tobacco. So then when I was looking through, then why is drinking companies with drinks heavily funding this, is because in 2017, the city of Seattle adopted an ordinance imposing a privilege tax on distribution of sweetened beverages like soda within the city limits. So those companies are heavily affected by this tax, and therefore they are trying to get all other companies to close the grocery loophole. So thanks to Seattle, the rest of us, everyone's concerned. So anyways, I thought that those were some interesting things. I don't have any extra little details on that one. But everyone's individual vote is super essential and important, and I want voters to be more informed than uninformed. I always get out the pamphlet and read the entire thing to my husband and myself, and he's like, and we're voting what? Just tell me what we're voting. Well, I'm going to vote this way. Often we cross-cancel each other's votes, though. So, okay.
So you did tell how 1631 has some effect on the school district with the tax. Does 1634 have a connection to our?
Not
the school?
specifically to our district, but just the amount of information that I got was what made me think something else is going on here. There's something else. So I don't see that really.
Could make our vending machines more expensive for the kids, maybe.
But if, well,
We don't have
I
any
guess
sugared
you're right.
drinks in our vending machines.
No sugary drinks in our vending machines?
Sorry, what?
Not that I've seen anyway. It was gonna be one of my questions.
Oh, Taylor,
Oh,
could
that's
you
right.
answer
They have
that?
sugar alcohols, it's better for you.
Yes. We don't have in the at least in the high school vending machines, it's all 0 sugar, 0 calorie, sodas, drinks, or sports drinks, and overpriced water.
That's the loophole. No sugar.
Since you brought it up, is it a state law that we don't have sugar, or is that just a school district policy? That we don't have, like we have Powerade Zero instead of the regular Powerade?
I can research that and get right back to the board on that. I'm not sure.
Just curious.
Mhm.
I don't know that one's better than the other.
Our actual
I do know,
application,
and it's not.
the application to us would be whether the county or the city decides to do some kind of grocery tax on any specific item. It could be anything. This would make it so that unless it's already been voted in, they can't ever put a tax on foods other than tobacco, marijuana, and alcoholic beverages that shouldn't be on our district property at all anyways. So,
All right. Thank you, Jen. Is that everything?
yes, thank you.
The next item came up at the last board meeting, and I think the request was just to leave it on there to keep us all thinking about it. That is the NSBA conference registration open on October 11th. Is there anyone who wants to commit to that or add any comment so Talia knows? Or are we gonna just keep it on there for next time? All right, looks like we're just keeping it there. Third item, OHS School Board site visit proposed agenda. So this was the proposed agenda that was given to Dr. Hurst for the high school visit. Since then, I believe we've received information that there is a 3-hour late start.
For retesting, for SBA, significant number of students being retested.
So that's just for the board to consider, I guess. I don't know what significant number means, and I don't know if that's all necessarily maybe one class.
300 students. So across the board, they have a 3-hour late start.
So have they asked that we don't do it on this day? I mean, the
I
administration,
think
are
we
they
can still
having a
do
problem
that,
concern with that?
but the concern would just be the visit
Meeting
for
with
the students.
I
Mhm.
think it would, yeah, I think it would just a heads up to us is what it kind of
Right.
to me.
Exactly.
So there's still 600 students we could meet with, roughly.
No, because it would be a late start. They wouldn't be there until
So
way
it'd be-
after, until
So
like
there's
11.
300 students testing,
300 students testing,
and the rest of the students aren't there.
right.
If, I just want to put one thing out here, if you ask the high school student body if they would come early for a 3-hour late start, I don't think very many people would, because.
Oh, come on. I know my son. He would not either.
Yeah, just to put that out there, that they definitely would not. Because I know some of the leadership kids who are supposed to come to this, I know they don't want to if they have to come early. So just a thought.
Leadership, you said?
Mm-hmm. There are some students there.
We always meet with leadership. I want to meet with somebody else. So is it worth changing to another day or going to a later time to meet with students?
I would say that either one of those are options. It's up to the board.
The problem with a later time is that it affects the teachers and the parents and everyone else.
Right, if we, yeah.
I'm not sure the parents are gonna be, I don't know that the parents have 3-hour late start for work.
So I would just be curious about when was that retesting determined or chosen? It's not a big deal other than hopefully we adopted this back at the retreat, right? Our calendar for the year.
But the state might have given the date for testing.
State might have required it, yes,
Um,
exactly.
So would staff be there still if a 3-hour late start?
Staff would be there.
Okay.
Is there testing on the 5th as well?
I don't think so, Tony. I'm verifying right now.
But it's an hour and it's an hour and a half late start on a Monday. So we'd still be able to be fine with the staff, but parents would be a problem at that time. Taylor, what time does school normally start?
Well, the hour and a half wouldn't be a big deal, so you just meet the students last.
Right, but parents might be running children around to other schools.
School starts at 8:30.
On a late start day?
Oh, on a late start date, no, it starts at 10
Yeah.
for a regular late start day.
Yeah, from my view, it'd be easier to switch it to Monday and move this schedule back an hour than it is to move it to Tuesday and try to tell everybody to come at 10 instead of 8. But just my personal opinion. 'Cause I don't know that the teachers have a 3-hour late start, but maybe they do on Tuesdays.
Sounds like
He said that they
Doesn't
would
know.
still be there.
What does the rest of the board feel?
But on Monday, they for sure, I guess would be interrupting some of the teachers' PLC time, right?
Sounds like there's a suggestion for Monday. Yes, there would be PLC time, hopefully, between 8:30 and 10. That's our purpose of late start, right?
But we could become part of the PLC time too, maybe, right? Without interrupting. My thought was is if that interrupts their normal PLC time, maybe that wouldn't work either.
But I don't think
I wanna
PLC
meet
would
with
start until
staff.
8:30 anyways, so anyways, I think Monday is a great choice.
Yeah, I do too.
Monday's good for the high school. No testing.
I won't be able to be there, but we've got 4 who can, so. Sounds like November the 5th what does the board want to do with the agenda? Leave it as is, or would you want to move that around? You wouldn't be able to meet with students at 9 if they don't get there till 10, probably.
Well, if we moved that down and then asked some specific students and told them we were having breakfast, and it was good breakfast,
Oh, yeah, they'd come,
yeah,
for sure.
right. And I think, I was gonna suggest that we do, again, at minimum, 2 students per grade that have made a year or more worth of progress from the last year. And not just the leadership students that I guess I should say that you've met with consistently.
How does the rest of the board feel about the suggestion?
That's fine. So when does the PLC start on the Mondays, Chris?
No, that's when the school starts. 8 o'clock.
They start at 8.
So if we flip those top 2,
So it is, instead of 7:30, it's gonna start at 8 on November 5th?
I think that's what's being discussed right now.
Yeah, my thought would be we'd start it at 8, and then after that, have the breakfast with parents, and then have the building administration review whatever they're gonna do after that, and then meet with students and skip the debrief, would be my preference. Follow where I'm suggesting there?
you're just moving everything down a half an hour, but still getting out at 10?
No, leaving flipping the top one that says 7:30 to 7:55 on this schedule, down to 9 o'clock. And then pushing the students down to wherever that puts them. And then the debrief thing, I think if we push the building stuff down later, I don't think we need to do that. Meet with the students and then meet with the admin again, so. Yeah, keep us closer to getting out still
So
around
20,
10.
I'm clear, you're going 8 to 8:25, meet with staff, 8:30 to 8:55, breakfast with parents, 9 to 9:25, building administration, student data, and then 9:30 to 10 would be meet with students.
Mhm.
Okay, that's a suggestion. What's the board feel about that?
I'm still concerned about parents trying to run kids around at that time to other schools.
So what would you suggest?
I don't know. Let's see, I usually leave my house at 9 on those days to get everyone at the right schools at the right time. So that might,
You could
yes,
put the,
I
you
think
could
that's
put the
probably the
building
most reasonable
administration
time.
before the parents with breakfast too, if you wanted, and push them down.
No, I think leaving it right there because it's not like the parent schedules change if there's a late start at school.
Well, and if they need to go, they can come to this conceivably and go still pick up their kids or whatever they need to do.
Right. Okay.
Okay, we clear on the times on that?
Yeah, we got it.
All right. If there's no more discussion on that, we will move on to the next item. And that is, I think I'm going to, well, we've already discussed the outside facilitation, so just one item to talk about with the facility committee. Discussion regarding the board facility committee and the Open Public Meetings Act. I put in the documentation there for the board, so they got the history on the reason this came up. So I'll just read that. After the 10/17 Board Facility Committee meeting, Director Ken Johnson contacted me with a concern regarding the fact the committee chose the new community parent member by writing their individual preference on a Post-it note and handing it to the committee chair to tally. Ken felt that this was a violation of the Open Public Meetings Act, and as one board member, I was not under the understanding that this committee was subject to the requirements of OPMA. If any other board members were aware, I don't believe it came up in any public discussions when this committee was formed prior to 10/17. I don't know if that's accurate, but I don't remember it coming up. I was able to explain the situation to our attorney after she did some research of case law. She was kind of, felt like it was a 50-50 situation. She didn't have a definite, but a recommendation was follow it just to be safe. And then I asked you to read the information. So if you have questions with that, Dr. Hurst, I think, has had some additional discussions with our attorney about that and might have some other insight, but we can just kind of start the discussion off on where to go from here with this committee so that our committee chair knows what the expectations are as well as we as a board. Who wants to start?
So what's the concern about the vote, Ken?
It was just done on a paper ballot. And I know RCW 42.30.060, I know it states that not necessarily boards, but elected officials shall not use private voting by means of voting. And that's for the purpose of, so constituents could see who cast the ballots and why.
You said elected officials?
Elected officials.
It says, I'll read you the
Yeah.
exact wording. No governing body of a public agency at any meeting required to be open to the public shall vote by secret ballot. Any vote taken in violation of this subsection shall be null and void and shall be considered an action under this chapter, is what you're referring to.
Yes.
So go on with your comments.
That was just my concern. I know there was no knowledge of the committee doing this. I mean, Ryan stated he's fresh and new at this, and they don't know all the Open Public Meetings Act's rules and everything else, and as we are required to go through training for it. And that was my,
You were originally gonna do, does that, what was the survey thing that you had? Does that require someone's like ID of like who the person is that voted?
So Ryan, just so we don't have conversation back and forth, we might ask you to come up
Oh,
to kind of explain, but I think we just need to keep it to discussion on the board. Thank you. Before you go on though, I just, probably for the public and for the press, let them know why we were voting in the first place. We had,
yes,
as
The committee,
the press knows,
we as
chose
members of the
5
committee.
people for this committee that were parents. One said they were not going to serve anymore, so then it was in a position of how do you fill the next position? And I think Ryan's feeling was let the committee decide
Mhm.
who would, from the 2 alternates, who would be chosen, and that's what came to this vote. So go ahead. Ken.
yeah, and you know, the way the vote turned out, I don't think it would have made a difference anyway, whether it was publicly shown or not, but it's still the process and what the law says. And I looked at this further too, a little bit, and I went back to the October 1st meeting at the beginning of that, and the chair stated at the time that for everybody to be cautious because electronic communication could be subject to public records request. So to me, that's a step in Open Public Meetings Act. And it's really, really
That's
close.
true, Ken, but I would just ask, is the chair an expert on OPM?
That's true.
Okay.
He's not. And
That was his understanding of it,
Yeah.
and so he made that comment, but I don't know that it's binding in
Yes.
some ways. I would
Right.
just say that.
Yeah.
Right.
And I just, myself, I feel when we go to our policies, when we go to governance policies, and if you read GP 6, and it does talk about support the board's work. Committee is a board advisory committee only if its existence and charge come from the board, and its work is intended to support the board's work, whether or not board members serve on this committee. And it goes on to state that only board advisory committees are those which are created by the board unless otherwise intended. A committee ceases to exist as soon as its task is complete. Board advisory committees, when needed, will be used to support the work of the board and reinforce the wholeness of the board's job, and never interfere with delegation or authority from the board to the superintendent. I feel that they're doing the work for the board, and myself, I think these should be subject to the Open Public Meeting Act. Just like the attorney has stated too, on the side of caution, I would rather be on the side of caution than not.
So you mentioned that you believe they're doing the work of the board, or they're supporting the board's work?
They're supporting the work, and they're also, what we're asking this group to do is go out and find us a couple alternatives. They're doing work for the board, I believe, on this.
But they're not taking any action on
They're
behalf
not
of the
taking
board.
any action for the board.
For me,
we're
that's,
making final
for me,
action.
that's the distinction, is,
So-
my personal feeling is it's a slippery slope, and I understand. I think this committee, they're putting it on YouTube voluntarily.
Mhm.
They're providing ways for the public to come. They're allowing public to come and sit in on the meetings. To me, to officially say that now this is an open public meeting of the board is a step too far, because I don't believe it is. And I understand what you're saying, I just disagree. And there's a part of me that I have an issue with reasons of why this came up and why it hasn't come up the first 2 meetings, and I feel like, I know another person contacted somebody else in the community to try to start a fire with this as well. And I don't know if that person contacted you or not. But to me, it's disingenuous, and I just feel like there's people that want to railroad And when they don't get their way, they want to try to find ways to circumvent things that are happening. I've seen it happen in this town, in the city, and in other organizations, and I'm not, as an elected official, I don't feel like I need to bow down to any of those people. They can vote for me or against me if they want, but I don't think creating issues is fair.
And that's not my intent at all.
I'm not saying it's your
yeah.
intent. I just
I
know
just want this
an
community to be-
another individual called people.
Yeah,
I'm not
very
saying that person
cautious.
called you.
I just want them to be very cautious as they move along.
Right. I can understand
Yeah.
your view as well, but the way that it's worded, it's no governing body of a public agency.
Mhm.
They are not a governing body. They are only giving us advice. They have no true power. Sorry. And so, according to that, and the definitions under 42-30.020, which is the page right above, definition of a governing body, definition of an action, definition of a public agency. I don't think that they fit any of those definitions. And in this 43 pages that Rocky provided for us of legal speak that I did read, they're both both of these instances, it was found that in these lawsuits, that a committee that was basically the same intent, not the same intent, a common intent of advice to a governing agency was not legally bound in that way. So I think it would be beneficial to treat it as such, but in this case, going too far. Slippery slope.
I'm a little confused, and I'll give my two cents worth here. Is the concern specifically the vote that took place the last meeting? And if so, if that was done incorrectly because it wasn't public, is it supposed to be a roll call at the time of vote, or?
If they're subject to the OPMA, yes. If they're not,
It
then
can't
no.
be a
Roll call.
secret
It's
ballot.
not
It can't be a
necessarily-
secret ballot
It
is
can be
the,
a raise
is
of
the
your
wording.
hand, but it doesn't have to be roll call.
Okay.
But the intent would be that you see, if you elected somebody, you're seeing how they're voting on something. So if you want to approach them later and say, why did you vote that way? You're going to be able to know who to go to. I think that's the intent of that, in my opinion.
So are we as a board in a position to approve or disapprove this vote, or is
So-
that why we're discussing this, or?
No, to me, I don't think the vote's not the matter. I think the matter to me is whether or not this group should be subject to the Open Public Meetings Act. And I guess it ultimately comes down to this board's decision on that.
Yeah, I guess
The
my,
vote could be corrected or whatever, that's no problem. Like I said, it's not gonna change the outcome of the vote anyway, how it was. I just seen the paper ballot, and I've always known that you never take a secret ballot by vote
yeah.
at any meeting.
The
So,
difference is none of those individuals are elected.
Yes,
I didn't vote, by the way. But it wasn't because I thought it was the OPMA Act. I just didn't feel like as a board member I needed to vote. That was my own choice. But I also chose to not make an issue of it in the committee meeting. I didn't tell anybody that I didn't vote. It's the first time. Probably Ryan doesn't even know that I didn't vote, or anybody else. I didn't think it was a big deal. My overarching issue is the OPMA wasn't created to be a gotcha. It was created to make sure there was transparency. And so I feel like this committee is trying to be transparent. I feel like if anybody made a complaint to the state would come in and find overall this committee's been, if anything, they've been overly transparent, and they haven't done anything to try to circumvent any public interaction. And so to me, I think we're doing good enough. I don't mind providing notices or any of that stuff. I'm against providing notices solely under the guise that it's under the Open Public Meetings Act, for me.
What are your thoughts, Mike?
Based on what I've heard tonight, that I don't think they should be subject to the OPMA myself.
So there's three who believe that shouldn't be. That's good enough. I was going to ask Dr. Hurst if there's anything else, but I don't know that there's any need to. If there's something you feel that we need to know that might be go against what we're thinking?
My only other comment is that we all need to understand, if we're wrong and somebody files a complaint, we're, at least Rob and I for sure are subject to $1,000 fine last time I looked, which I'll pay if I'm wrong, but,
Well, hopefully it would be a first offense for me, I think, of 500.
it's 500.
So I would just
But
say.
I just want to make the other board members may be, if somebody made a complaint and we lost, you may be liable to some personal financial loss. I just want to make sure everybody understands that.
And I'll just
That's
reiterate,
okay.
I think what Tony was saying, this is coming straight from the attorney, and she says if the committee is acting in an advisory capacity, then we are not governed by the OPMA statutes.
I think that was kind of mentioned as well. Jen definitely mentioned that, so. We don't need to vote on this, but I'm getting the consensus that the majority feels that the committee, well, I think should continue to be very transparent like they have been, is not held to the OPMA, and that's why I asked you, you might want to stick around, just so you could hear the discussion and know going forward. Okay, so if there's no more on that, we're gonna move on. We good? Okay.
Linkage meeting before you move on.
Yeah, I'm not done with that section yet. I didn't, to the next item.
That bullet.
Okay, so the next item was what Director Stevenson asked to be added. This is just talking, we need to talk about the linkage committee so that we're all aware of how that's gonna be formatted, a reminder of who we're meeting with, and kind of where we're at with that. So I'll let you tell us
So
how that
we're
done.
supposed to be meeting with CBHA. I am unsure of exactly who they will be inviting to the table. Could we ask our board secretary to reach out and find an estimate of numbers from them? And then also, do we want to have cookies again by our chef class? Yes. Yeah, cookies are always good.
I kind of felt like that was a big hit. People really, and knowing that they came from the students was a big deal, I think. So.
Right.
Yeah, I like
Okay,
that.
do you want me to contact her again?
That'd be great.
I can,
think.
okay.
The rest of the board feel
Yes.
like yes on that? Okay.
When is that meeting?
That would be, it should be right before our next board meeting, regular board meeting, first one in November at 6 o'clock,
So it's November.
13th, right? We had to move it from the 12th to the 13th, I believe, because of Veterans Day.
And so it's the same, so it'll be that same day.
Yes.
So, my question is, I know Desert Oasis created some book, like a book project.
Mini
Mini
libraries.
libraries. I don't know if they've put those out in the community yet.
They
They
have
haven't.
not.
Just curious, if they haven't by then, it might be a cool thing to have the Desert Oasis students or somebody bring in those just for CBHA to see the project-based learning and what a project-based learning looks like. I went to that, it was pretty cool, but just a thought, depending on what the board thinks.
I actually
CBHA.
talked to,
It's a linkage to meet with CBHA.
I talked to Principal Tovar about that a little bit this weekend. It didn't sound like they still have to have an assembly, so doesn't sound like they're gonna be putting it out very quickly. And he said maybe even in this spring, so they might be available to, even if there's one, to bring in and just show the work. I think that's a good idea. Rest of the board like that idea?
Perfect.
So just so I have it on my calendar, is it 5:30 or 6?
6.
Okay, so it's 6 to
6
7?
to 7 for the linkage, and then
Okay.
our board meeting starts at 7.
Okay.
And then WASDA starts the next day.
And where is this linkage meeting taking place?
It'll be here.
Okay.
So I think same format as last time, no specific agenda, just open to questions, discussion, anything that they want to bring up. Is that our plan?
Sorry, I put it in my calendar. What's up?
Same format as last linkage meeting.
No specific agenda,
Well, you're
just
asking me,
open
but-
to questions.
Yeah.
I was asking kind of everyone.
Oh, gotcha.
Just like last
I
time.
like
Right.
it.
And it was very,
Yes.
we got a lot.
I mean, it
done.
kind of-
Sometimes takes a little bit to get it
Some,
rolling.
yes, right,
Yeah.
but yes, that's, I mean, and so, if you could suggest that if they have any questions, comments, whatever, that they come, that we're not having an agenda when you check how many people are coming. Then they might already have a list of questions. I mean, I mentioned that to the Ministerial Association, but, right,
I think one thing that is different with this group and something to reiterate to them is that they're a large employer in our community. They employ a lot of our students who go through our system. And so hopefully that's, for me, as one board member, that's my hope is they come back with insight about that. Where are the gaps? What are the things that we might be able to do as a board from a policy perspective to help narrow some of those gaps that they're seeing in the education when they come to.
or kudos. Could be kudos too.
Oh, yeah, we'll take that for sure.
Well, I know after the
Career fair?
career fair the other day, they had 2 pages worth of kids that are gonna follow up with them and do some sort of shadowing or something with that organization. So they should have some good
It's
insight.
called a site visit now, not a shadow.
Thank you for the correction, Jen.
Only because they kept correcting me. Not that I'm correcting.
Apparently nobody's interested in financial planning, by the way. It's a dying field.
I'm sorry. I had some people interested in the old hotel.
The art, they want to do art. It's all right.
Yes.
Okay. I know it's not on here exactly, but I'm gonna back up a little bit to the board facility committee. It definitely feels as I'm sitting in these meetings that there's a strong focus on the, I almost, and Tony, correct me if you didn't get this feeling, I might be on a tangent. We can't do anything without a bond. I get that sense that that's where this committee feels. And I, as one board member, don't feel like that's necessarily true. When we talk about priorities, some of those priorities might not be high-cost items that maybe as a board we're able to budget somehow within our current capacity. And I guess I'm asking for permission from the board, if it's okay to kind of bring that up, that when it comes to prioritizing, yeah, we don't have enough money in the bank account to build another school, but we might have money that we can budget to do certain things that are smaller ticket items, high priority. Is that okay to bring up?
I think so.
And then it's really up to us as a board to determine when they come back with these priorities. I think it's up to us to decide how much of this needs to be bond, how much can we do without having to wait for a bond. Would you guys agree that that's kind of, that's the power in what we have as the board?
Are you thinking of sharing that specific undesignated funds number? So that they go, well, like, what are we talking about? Because that's what my first question would be.
That is not money that can be used towards construction.
Undesignated funds cannot be used towards
Not
construction.
without a board action to move it into capital
It has to be a
projects.
capital project.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is when Rob's talking about there are funds to do things,
Well, it's a public number. Anybody can go find that number. It's not like it's a secret or anything.
right,
So
but most
I
people
don't-
don't know how to find that number.
Well, I mean, Rob's saying
what that means.
here's what the number is, but it really doesn't mean anything unless it's in capital projects. And so if he brought up the
And if
number,
the rest of the board agreed with it, we haven't ever come to a number as a board, so I wouldn't feel comfortable throwing out a number anyway. But I think just the concept that there may be some things, once you bring options, there may be some things we're able to work into more immediate than what some people think.
Okay.
We might think, oh, yeah, we're not gonna be able to do that for 2 or 3 years because we gotta wait for a bond.
and
I don't know how I would structure the conversation, but I would just maybe wanna see if it would be okay.
I guess throwing numbers out to me is more than the committee needs to know. That they've been tasked, according to that policy, to come up with a list of needs,
Right.
prioritized,
I guess
and some options.
You're
and-
right.
And what I wouldn't want the committee to end up doing is coming back and saying, we want X, and you have the money to pay for it, so we want you to do X. That's not, I don't think that's what the board wants. I understand what Rob's saying, and I don't disagree with that.
Right.
Part of it.
Okay, I guess from my construction experience, that's what my first question would be, and not everybody thinks like I do. So I'd be like, well, then what are we talking about here? Like, are we talking like a basketball court behind someone's building? Or are we talking like an auditorium? And so I guess that's what I was referring to, but yes, I don't want them to feel like they can say that. I agree.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because it'll help me then if to know how to answer that without being able to give a number. I can't give a number, so I will think about how I would respond to that question.
Okay.
But there is some of those priority, once they come up with that priority list and those priority needs, we as a board could still look at it and say, hey, yeah, we still might be able to fund that right away and get that project going before the.
What I'm afraid might happen is the priorities are all gonna get shoved into the one big
One.
bond. And I don't think that has to happen that way. I do hope they come and really as a committee, determine a list of priorities. Because we're gonna have privy to that too, even though that's not what we asked them to come back with to us. We asked them to come back with options. Hopefully we're on that board. We're on the committee. We'll be able to show, here's really the list that they came up with as their priorities.
And I think it would help that this committee was not, from my view, intended to be a pre-bond committee necessarily. And so I think there is some confusion, and I can help during the next committee meeting to.
Well, and I think
help
that's what
with
was
some of
said
that
specifically
confusion.
to them. You will then become this, and because of Brad and because of Dax, they
Well,
basically said,
Brad just gave his opinion.
yes, but a lot of people take Brad's opinion as gospel. And he's very convincing as this is the way it is, and that's the only way it's going to be, and you've all committed to 7 years.
Yeah, I heard that too.
That's
I
the way
was
he
there.
said it. So, that's not always the case.
Okay.
As one committee member, I can help clear that up a little bit from the
Okay.
board's
Right.
perspective.
If we're ready, we'll move on to the next item. Okay, B4, student representative reports.
All right,
Who's first?
Taylor is.
All right.
Okay, so there's kind of a lot. So first we had PSAT testing and continual stamp testing. Midterms and student conferences are coming up. And then for sports, our soccer team, football team, and volleyball team are all in postseason. Playoffs and districts is to be decided. So the leadership is starting a hashtag #SeeMe campaign. So this is more bringing light to, it's a stomp out bullying, essentially. It's the see me is to bring light into diversity. So don't just see me for what I look like, see me for who I am. So then we are also starting kind of a Smile for Kyle, as mostly everybody knows. A young boy passed away, Kyle Ludi, and he was basically the embodiment of joy. So the whole premise of it is to spread joy through tough situations. We've had district support. MMS had made posters, DOHS had made posters, OHS has made posters. We have had a blew out volleyball game where there are pictures on the Kyle Ludi memorial page of blue is his favorite color. So we have these wristbands that say Kyle Strong, Smile for Kyle. They're all in blue. We had people show up wearing blue to the volleyball game. So that's going to be another kind of campaign to really just spread joy throughout everything. And yeah. So leadership is working on getting people for our site visit. So far we're thinking of three ASB officers and 2 to 3 leadership students if the board so chooses to have leadership there. I believe. Yes.
I'm sorry, I wasn't following that last part.
Well,
For what?
for the site, sorry, I was going really fast.
For the site visit.
Or the OHS site
When we're
visit?
coming to your schools, what you're talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay, I'm with you. No, I'm okay. Because we went from blue to, and I was like, site visit, what are we, okay, thank you.
Sorry, I was talking really fast. Anybody have any other questions?
So, which students are you planning to have for the site visit?
If the board decides to have leadership students, we are thinking of having 2 to 3 just regular leadership students and then 3 ASB officers. So, yeah.
Because, yeah, we talked about who we wanted to have, but we never really decided who we wanted to, we never
I think
said
there
that's,
was- I think
we
there-
did?
I got consensus that
oh, I see.
2
I didn't
students
see the
with
nods.
at least a year growth from each grade level. Some may be leadership.
Mm-hmm.
It's possible, yeah.
Do you still want ASB officers to be a part of that?
Was that the intent, that those were the 8 students the board wanted to meet with?
Yeah, let's just stick it to those 8 let's stick to those 8 this time, would be my feeling. We've met with leadership every year since I've been on the board. or since every year since I've been on the board, every year that we've done a visit.
So should I bring to the class, because we did talk about this earlier, who would be going to the visit. Should I bring to them that we aren't going to have specifically leadership?
I think it's probably conversation with Bergar, right, with the principal, and then he'll probably then let people know who's going to meet with them.
Okay.
You might want to ask him what, they would say it's up to him to find out who has grown, and
Okay.
Then he'll let everyone know. I think I just got two that nods though, as far as agreeing that just those 8 students. Is that everyone? Okay.
Yeah.
So that is a consensus.
Okay. All right. I will let them know.
All right.
My turn. I do want to apologize for being late. I was at the city board meeting with my,
Was it good?
so fun. Oh my gosh. Jumping with joy. So our leadership class is helping decorate the trunk or treat bus, and we'll be handing out candy on October 31st, not 21st.
Is
For
that
Halloween.
trick or treat bus happening at Wahitas again? Or where's that at?
Don't
Okay.
They don't involve me in those things. We have the ASVAB test for all juniors tomorrow. We will start our SBA makeups in math and ELA next week. Oh. Sorry, I have to
You
retake
sound
my
excited
math.
about those.
We are using Star 360 resources to conduct interventions in our English and math classes on all Mondays. This is intended to help our students with academic gaps in their learning. Ms. Camacho and Mr. DeFal develop a monthly plan, and we'll be doing the Star 365 question assessment every 2 weeks to see if our students are grasping the knowledge. Okay, those are those notes. Moving on to these. We're just getting ready for conferences, which is next week. Yay. We were invited to the job fair, and so all of the grades got to go. This year there weren't as many
Exhibitors?
exhibitors, yeah, and it was still a lot of fun, and it just wasn't as big as last year. And I think a lot of our kids kind of noticed that, not just our kids, but a lot of students. So that was a little disappointing, but I'm still glad we got to go because a lot of the freshmen they loved it, so that's good. FFA is having, we're going to call it an annual dinner. It's just for the community to come and, play games and stuff just to kind of get the community involved in FFA and trying to get more students involved in FFA. And that is on November 5th at 6 o'clock in Mr. Silva's room. So I would love for y'all to come and support FFA if you could. And then I have a question for you guys that I get asked a lot, and it's about Chromebooks. So our students, it's really loud. Our students are wondering when we're going to get our new Chromebooks because we have our dinosaur ones, and a lot of students are kind of getting upset about that.
So you have Chromebooks that work, they're just not, they're
Right.
the original, the
They're-
first version ones?
Yes, they're the older ones, and a lot of our students are feeling left out, I guess.
What year did you guys get them?
I don't know that. We've been
What grade were you in
told
when you got them?
9th grade. I mean,
And you're a senior now?
yeah.
She doesn't know that they're necessarily the brand new when she got them,
Yeah.
probably, though.
Yeah, but I mean,
Right.
these ones are the original ones that we got from before. So they're really old.
We have a technology plan to, we cycle those through. I don't remember it.
Right, and
You
we've
talked
been
to us and told us,
being
I don't know.
told since for a couple years now that we're gonna get the new ones, and that just hasn't happened yet. And so I'm just bringing it to you guys. I'm not trying to cause an issue. I just really want to answer for them because I mean that's something they ask me a lot.
I think it's a fair question, and I think that we could easily have an answer to that at our next board meeting. Absolutely.
I have a question real quick. Is it is there gonna be a specific plan to replace Chromebooks, or is it just once you graduate you turn it in and then those ones get sent to the freshmen?
There's a replacement plan.
Oh, okay. I just wasn't sure.
Yeah, Rigo shared it with us. It wasn't that long ago he shared it with us. I don't remember exactly
probably
they're
in
talking
the
about
summer.
some options to let seniors potentially, since they're gonna be just given back, or they'll buy them back for almost nothing, they talked about maybe giving them to graduating seniors to keep them.
Oh.
So there's those discussions are happening. I know they'll have an answer for that. I'm curious to know as well.
Yeah.
If that was that you would give them to the graduating seniors, would they still have all of the blocked websites on it? Because like you can't do anything on
I'm
them.
sure they would
I'm
unlock
sure
them.
you'd set up a different username, not your school username, once you left with
Oh,
them.
For sure.
I have something else, and Greg isn't here, but remember last year when I had a real issue with that one door being locked in the ag building? And he said it was a safety thing, and I totally understood that. But now there's a sign saying that door is locked, just go around. So doesn't that kind of defeat the purpose of having the door locked?
Another fair comment.
Okay, I'm really upset
He's
Greg's not here.
You're right, though.
Okay.
That
But,
door was that same way for Meet the Teacher Night.
Oh, is it just
It
permanently
was
locked?
locked that night as well.
Nice. But yeah, I just noticed that, and I was like, okay.
Great.
All right, well, that is it. Do you guys have any questions for me?
Do you have something to tell us about the day of your coronation?
Oh, yes. It's on November 17th at 6 o'clock at the Eagles. If you guys would like to come, we're having prime rib, mashed potatoes, macaroni and cheese, smoked macaroni and cheese. It's delicious. And then we have a silent and a live auction, and it's just to kind of support me throughout my year as queen, if you guys would like to come.
What's the date of that again?
November 17th,
And then going back November 5th for FFA, what time is that?
6 o'clock as well.
It's right during the facilities committee meeting, by the way.
Wait, I thought November like 17th. I thought that was not the retreat, the conference.
That's why
Plus
we're
the
coming back.
conference.
We're coming back Friday night, so we're coming back Friday night because I have to be back the 17th.
Okay. Never mind.
So.
She's coming back the 17th, so she can be here for that. Yeah.
All right, well.
If you whisper into the microphone, they can't hear you.
Okay. All right, those are good discussions. Thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item C1, required approvals. I'll accept a motion.
I move that we approve the required approvals.
Been a motion by Director Stevenson to approve,
Second?
second by Director Garza, just in front of Director Johnson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Under superintendent comments, there's one item, that is the financial report for September. If there are no questions for clarification, we'll move on. Okay.
I just had one question. So we're below the projected budgeted FTE in September by 121 students. I know we were below last year as well. I'm just curious, is this should this be a concern for me as a board member? Do we think there's going to be some more people that show up here? At what? I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. What dollar figure is that? 121 FTE.
I don't know, the 121 FTE actually includes though, is it the Running Start program? And there's no Running Start in the month of September. So there's, I think, 53 or 57 additional students that are gonna come in on the count right away in October. That number's also come up a little bit. It's gradually come up over the past, as I've looked back, each month has gone up. And the funding actually is taken, it's not on, I believe it used to be an October 1 hard date. And there was thoughts that was still how our funding was how it came in through the apportionment. But actually it's the average of the 5 months. It starts in January and then it becomes the average of 6 months and the average of 7 months. So actually we get the benefit of our enrollment throughout the whole year. So, but the biggest piece of that is that Running Start number, and so additional 57 right off the top.
So overall, you feel like we're still gonna be close to the budget at the end? Because we do have a natural dip in December, part of December, part of January as well, right?
I think that dip was less and then became more pronounced last year. A lot of people went south last year, I think.
For whatever reason, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm glad, thanks for the report. It's concerning based on last year.
I do have a question based on that. Did we hire teachers this year based on 4,477 students?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Okay, we'll move on to item D1. Board response to monitoring reports. These were our responses from our survey monkeys. We're gonna start with EL8. And so I will read on this one, I'm gonna read the entire policy. There was only one item in this that did not get full compliance from the board. So the superintendent shall not fail to give the board information as necessary to be adequately informed. Therefore, the superintendent shall not cause or allow, number one, a failure to submit monitoring data required by the board in an accurate and understandable fashion, directly addressing provisions of the board policies being monitored. All reports submitted shall be submitted before the board's agenda is available to the public. Number two, a failure to identify reports required by the state and federal agencies and ensures accurate completion of the same. All required reports shall be submitted on or before the date required by the above agencies. Number three, a failure to inform the board if, in the superintendent's opinion, the board is not in compliance with its own policies on governance process and board superintendent relations. Number four, a failure to work with the board as a whole, except when fulfilling individual requests for information, as long as such requests do not require a material amount of staff time or resources or are not disruptive. Working with individuals or committees duly charged by the board, or communicating with the president. Number five, a failure to report before the next regularly scheduled board meeting any actual or anticipated noncompliance with any board's ends or executive limitations policy. As I stated, all items were found to be in compliance, except there was one that found in compliance with the following exception. And the comment is there have been a few times in the past 12 months when reports have been submitted after the agenda was available,
Was made available to the public.
Okay, made available to the public. So there's a feeling that the monitoring reports were made available to the public after the agenda was made live, or was made available to the board after the agenda was made live to the public, because that was the comment.
It's not just monitoring reports, though. It's monitoring data. So it could be any sort of, from my view of this, it's not just specific to a monitoring report.
I can't think of a time when we got monitoring data outside of a monitoring report, but.
Well, from my view, when a teacher comes, when a school comes to present and they don't put their PowerPoint in until 5 hours before the board meeting, that makes us out of compliance. Because that is stuff that I use to monitor. Just from one board member's opinion.
All right. So this does not change compliance, but it does list an exception. Does the board feel that they would like a version of that comment in the monitoring response document?
So in the past, if we decide to keep it in compliance, then we do not want to comment, correct? Or can we have a comment and still have it be in compliance?
We can do whatever we want.
Okay,
It's one
As long
item
as three
of the whole
wanna do it.
policy.
right.
I'd like to see the comment there if it in fact is substantiated.
Well, it's up to us to determine if it's substantiated.
I mean, was it your comment, Tony, and that was a
That's my comment, and I could name several times where, just as one instance, where I have not been able to review whatever the school's coming to present before a board meeting because it wasn't there when it went live.
And there's been a time or two that there's been other, not necessarily specific monitoring reports, but actionable reports haven't been in there on time as well, which is not monitoring data, but actionable data. I think I'd be okay with leaving the comment as well.
Is that in reference to times when we do a school visit and they go through data with us there at the?
That could be. I was specifically referencing the data when they come to the board meetings. That a lot of times those reports, they come with documents that aren't on the committee head, aren't on the.
I know there's
the
been times
packet.
at the schools I visit, they don't show us all the data in sake for time too, but we see more of it when they
I
come
just
and do
want-
their presentation, so.
I like to throw out there, I'm thinking of intent, right?
Yeah.
I believe that the intent of the board for this specific question was specifically about monitoring reports. Because it does say, in an accurate and understandable fashion, directly addressing provisions of the board policy being monitored. It's very specific, like when and I don't disagree with Tony that I would like to see that stuff in the board, but I don't know that it applies to this specific question. When someone comes and gives a report, they're not giving a report based on a specific policy being monitored. Whereas when a monitoring report is being given, it is on a specific policy being monitored. So I struggled with that part of it, and it's really just about intent of the policy itself. I do believe we have, and I can't think of it off the top of my head, so I hesitate to say this a little bit, but I think we have a policy that addresses other information that's brought to the board
Okay.
in a timely manner, and I would say that absolutely that would be.
Right,
something
and
to
we've
be
already
put in
addressed
that.
those things, I think, in another report.
That's just my
Um,
personal comment.
But if we're doing site visits for the purpose of direct inspection, then would that not be monitoring data that's coming from that school?
Yeah, but
Yes, but no?
is the intent of this for saying that even when we come for direct inspection, they need to be well prepared for us and have a report ready in a timely manner? I don't think so, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess pushing back a little bit, this policy isn't a policy that's solely based on monitoring reports. There's several sections in here, and none of the rest of these bullets are about monitoring reports. So why is section 1 only about monitoring reports
I
and the
was
rest
saying
aren't?
that I believe the intent of question 1, section 1, was for monitoring reports. I'm just saying that's my personal feeling. And I monitored it in that way with that assumption. The board might change my mind today.
It does talk about reports submitted shall be submitted before the board's agenda is live and available to the public, accurate and understandable fashion, directly addressing provision of the board's policies being monitored. So I think I would agree with Tony and would say that I want that comment to stay in because that one, this whole thing is about communication. The whole
Yeah.
EL is about communication and reports is a part of communication. So
I
in that
understand
case,
it
I would say yes.
differently. I guess as a board, I feel like we've celebrated schools that have came in and tied the reports towards our ends and towards the board's policies. And so I don't know how we have to set a clear signal one way or the other. But
So do you feel it should also be an exception as well? Keep the comment with an exception.
I cannot remember a specific time that exact thing took place. Not that I'm doubting, but the second sentence is submitted before the board's agenda is made available to the public. And that therefore it is a report as well. So I don't know if I would change my vote, but because I don't remember those specific times, but I would want to keep the comment so that when we are doing an evaluation, we can just remember that aspect and see if it, since this time because we'll also look at the date and go, it's been fixed since then.
This comment is gonna become the board's comment, by the way, not Tony's comment. It was like
Correct.
just so
Right,
everyone
yes,
knows that.
yes, definitely. And at that time, we might just go, I don't remember that, so we're gonna take it out.
I actually remember some of the times Tony's talking about, my issue is more about the intent of the policy itself, that number. What do you think, Ken?
I'm reading back over the policy several times here, and I'd have to agree with you that we're actually monitoring the policy. It overlooks at the first sentence, and bullet 1, a failure to submit monitoring data required by the board in an accurate and understandable fashion, directly addressing provisions of the board policies being monitored. So,
Do you feel required, required by the board just hit me there, Tony. Do you think the information that a school brings was required by the board? Do we require them to bring any information to us?
Why do they come and report?
They ask us what kind of information we want, so.
We do tell them what we want them to bring.
Do we?
Every time they ask us.
And then we say, yes, you are required to bring that.
I've also heard too, why do we even do the site visits, at times?
So Ken,
By
are
us
you
or them?
saying no comment,
By
don't
us.
leave the comment?
I would say no,
Okay.
because I don't think we're,
And Mike, what would you say?
I said leave the comment.
And would you say in compliance with an exception or in compliance with just a comment?
In compliance with the comment.
So it sounds like in
I'm the same.
compliance is the majority and leaving the comment is the majority. You still want the comment if it's in compliance without an exception, Tony?
I was the only one that thought it was an exception.
Can we modify how so that we need to change some words, though?
Well, Tony wrote it, so we always need to change some words.
The three of you said to go ahead and leave it how it is. Now you want to change it?
I just said we want to leave the comment. There have been a few times in the past 12 months when reports have been submitted after the agenda was made available to the public. You said that when you were actually saying it out loud, but change the word more to the word to, otherwise we'll be like, what?
Sounds
Did we
good.
mean there?
And as I stated earlier, the rest of them are all found to be in compliance with no comments.
Okay.
Are we gonna move on
My
to-
iPad keyboard's small.
Yeah, you can still spell it correctly?
Nope, not on an iPad keyboard. It's difficult.
Okay.
We ready to move on to the next?
Like
email?
Brad Boersma said, we didn't learn to spell in Othello. Just quoting Brad.
Okay.
EL 9. Using multiple media resources, the superintendent shall not cause or allow a failure to establish and maintain strong links with the public in languages reflective of the community to ensure that they are kept informed of district work and results and are predisposed to provide support within the community on all district issues. This will include on-site translation services at every opportunity. And that was found to be in compliance with all. One comment, with the board meetings being broadcast in both Spanish and English now, I do not see a need to ask the district to bear the cost of providing a translator at board meetings.
would that be an issue though, if we had somebody that showed up that did need translation? That would rather show up here to speak to us?
No,
Any public comment?
we can give them earphones and they can listen to the Spanish YouTube live if they would like.
What if they have a question or public comment to us that's in
Yes.
Spanish?
We have a board member that speaks Spanish at the moment.
And I would agree, as long as we have a Spanish-speaking board member, that would be
Okay.
needed.
Or yes, or someone else
as long
that
as there's somebody
sits
here
up
to do
here
it.
that can do that as well.
It just seems redundant to me. It's 90% of the meetings that we have, we don't need translation. My memory is, and this is before you were on the board, is that we have to pay somebody a minimum of 2 or 3 hours to show up. Even if they go home, we still have to pay them. So
Well, you
it's
know
a waste of the
I
district's
think
money.
the person who shows up now is the person who does YouTube Live in Spanish. Are you okay with that part?
So how is she gonna, my understanding is it's been two separate people, but
Have there been two?
In the far past, you're right, they have been two separate people. We stopped that and now have only had one.
Sounds like a moot point. There's only one
yeah.
right now.
So it doesn't really change your concern then either way, because whoever's translating now isn't gonna quit translating to come out and provide translation assistance to whoever shows up anyway.
But the concern, I'm guessing this comment was based on the fact that you think that we're doing that now, right? We're not, so are we good with it?
Yep.
Okay. Is comment needed?
No.
There was no, it's a / suggestion, so that's my suggestion.
Is a suggestion needed?
No.
All right. So we will move on. It was a good suggestion, though. Item GP1. The board, supporting the welfare of students, the work of the superintendent, administration, staff, and the interests of our diverse community, holds itself accountable to the citizens of the district by ensuring that all action it takes is consistent with the law and the board's policies. In the fulfillment of this charge, the board is committed to rigorous, continual improvement of its capacity to govern effectively through policy by defining its concerns in terms of values and its vision in terms of expectations. The following beliefs reflect the board's fundamental values and character for the district. Education is essential to quality of life. Every individual can learn, has value, and is entitled to be treated with respect, has a responsibility to contribute to a safe and civil school environment, has a responsibility to family, school, and community, and is responsible for his or her decisions and behaviors. Another belief, high expectations are important for student learning. Ability to adapt to change is essential. A diverse population working in unity enriches a community. Integrity is essential for trust, and trust is fundamental to quality relationships. And all community members are equal partners in education and are treated as such. And the third item, the board's purpose is to assure that the Othello School District achieves the results described in its ends policies and operates within the parameters described in its executive limitations policies. All were found to be in compliance, except there was an exception on the first one, but there's no comment. I don't know if the board member who marked the exception, if that was accidental. We did have one board member or student rep did not answer this one because we have 6 that answered it. But does anyone remember if they marked it with exception? Maybe it was accidental, or do they have a comment? Doesn't look like. Anyway, okay, so that one's no exception then. We did, the last one, in order to maintain its commitment to excellence and governance, to the provisions of this policy, and to approve its own performance, the board commits to the following actions. And we have 4 comments here, I appreciate that. We do not have them on the other 2 because that item, I apologize, I didn't notice that item was not in there, but we'll get it on the next one. I'll still ask the question though. So 4 comments in here. The first one, we must continue to abide by and when necessary, update our policies to ensure the desired outcomes are achievable. Second comment, all board members will participate in policy revisions during the upcoming school year based on community input. Third comment, continue to work with ELs in policy governance and not operational details. And number 4, continue to push our district to find, enhance.
I think there's supposed to be a comma there. Or an and.
To maybe find and enhance the educational offerings students have as outlined in our ENDS policies. Those were all really good comments. That is 4 actions. We may want to keep it more concise. What would the board like to do?
I like all 4.
So
I wrote number 3 more as a proclamation to myself, but I don't know if it's necessarily essential to keep. I think that's a given.
I put number 2 as an action, and my hope was that there was a commitment by all board members to take part in a revision. this year,
I see what you're saying.
everyone's gonna have at least one policy that they revised or wrote a new policy. That was my purpose of that. That was kind of an easy action to track.
Is there a
guess I
way to
read-
track who made those
I read that
changes,
as
though?
participate. I guess I read the participate in that. I didn't quite read what you were saying there.
Right, I didn't follow that either. And is there a way to track that?
Well, I guess we participate when we vote on a policy revision, but I
Right.
meant for the actual revision itself, but we can leave them all in here. It's fine.
I
think they're
like them
good
all.
too.
My only hesitation with writing it in a way where every board member has to rewrite a policy during the year. Maybe there's not 5 policies that need to be rewritten, and are we gonna hold somebody accountable for not rewriting a policy?
But I didn't interpret it,
I didn't interpret
the
that
way
way either,
that you
but
did
now that
either, so, you know.
now that I heard the way Rob said it the second time, I
Yeah.
don't
And
want,
you can
I don't wanna
revise it, doesn't mean the
invent,
board's going to approve it.
yeah. I don't want board members to try to have to invent things to redo just so they can say they redid something.
You revised like 30 policies this year.
Well, he's obviously
I don't
not,
think it's
not
gonna
the
be an
one
issue.
that we need to worry about participating. He's got that down.
But we all participate when they're
Yes.
brought up and we
Make our
look at
comments
them and
and,
make our comments. We're all
vote.
participating and we make the necessary changes. And that's how I see it.
well, and when I read it, I thought, we have to do that all the time anyways. I don't know why that would be in there.
What was that like?
Because I didn't interpretate it the way that you intended.
Interpret it.
We're good with leaving them, we can leave them.
Okay, can we find and enhance the educational offerings on number 4? That must have been Tony, because he has an iPad keypad thing problem. I don't even know if that was really you. It's just
9:40 p.m. I would make the guess, since the other 2 comments were at 9:48 p.m. in the other policies.
Okay. Was that clear as mud, Talia? Awesome.
great.
All right, item GP3, the job of the board is to represent our community and lead the district by determining and demanding excellent organizational performance. To distinguish the board's own job from the job of the superintendent, the board will, number 1, ensure that the mission and ends are the focus of organizational performance. Number 2, use appropriate avenues to ensure input from students, administration, staff, parents, and community members as a means to link to the entire community. For example, community surveys to gather input, invite participation in decision-making about levies, bonds, etc. Number 3, develop written governing policies at the broadest levels. First bullet, ends. Organizational products, impacts, benefits, or results for specific recipient and their relative worth. What end result is desired for whom and at what cost? Second bullet, executive limitations. Constraints on executive authority which establish the practical, ethical, and legal boundaries within which all executive activity and decision-making will take place. Third bullet, board superintendent relationship. How authority is delegated and its proper use monitored. The superintendent's role, authority, and accountability. And the fourth bullet, governance process. How the board will conceive, carry out, and monitor its own work. Fourth item, assure successful superintendent performance by monitoring ends and executive limitation policies. And fifth item, assure successful board performance by monitoring governance process and board superintendent relationship policies. The board found all those to be in compliance. The question would be, what are the actions we want to take this coming year to continue with excellence in governance?
And we should all write or rewrite a policy? That wasn't sincere,
That
just in
didn't
case you weren't sure.
Sound like it was sarcastic, but. So in order to maintain its commitment to excellence in governance, to the provisions of this policy, and to improve its own performance, the board commits to the following actions. I'm just gonna throw out that all those comments we made in the EL
One?
one kind of fit still in this EL. But if there's anything additional we'd like.
Are you
now's the
saying we
time.
just want to copy those and put them in? Or not?
Take 2 of them and leave them in EL1, move 2 of them to EL3, you can do that as well. However you want to do it.
I think we should just leave it as none and then fix the Survey Monkeys for next time.
Is that a
We're
sad
here.
face?
No, I mean, we're here, like, we don't have to do it only on Survey Monkeys, there's other ways we can do it, so.
I agree. We don't have
What's
to
the
do it
rest of the
only on
board do?
Survey Monkeys.
Or what's the rest of the board think?
I think had the box been there, I probably would have answered the same thing. Mine was comment number 1 on previous. I would have said, let's try to keep ourselves accountable by updating when necessary. I think it would fit on this as well.
I agree. Let's put that comment in.
Can we combine 1 and 2 from the last one? We must continue to abide by and when necessary, update our policies to ensure the desired outcomes are achievable, and we will all participate in policy revisions based on community input. So we're kind of combining 1 and 2 from the last one together.
Are you going back to
I
GP1?
actually am looking at
or
GP1, the
looking
exact
forward?
wording, because it does, they do. When you do 3 GPs at a time, I think a lot of them are gonna have duplicated type of things when we have evaluate 3 at a time, potentially.
And the answer to your question is we can do anything we want. As long as 3 of us agree.
I like Mike's comment. I think we should just put that one in here as well.
In both places or,
Both places.
all right,
Good with that.
I agree.
I've already mentally moved on from GP1 because we already approved it.
GP4. The purpose of monitoring the board's governance process and board superintendent relationship policies is to determine the degree to which the policies are being fulfilled. Monitoring will be automatic as possible, using board time efficiently or effectively so that meetings can be used to create the future rather than review the past. These policies are monitored through board self-assessment according to the table provided in GP 4.1. I just think that we're out of compliance right now with this because we are not doing this effectively or efficiently. Not tonight, anyway.
Are you ready for a comment to make things better?
Yes.
I think that,
We all found this to be in compliance, by the way.
yeah, for future suggestions, I think we should either have the board president verbally record each one of these policies and just play the recording before each one, or we should just figure that after 5 years that the public's had a chance to read it, and we don't need to read the whole policy every single time of every EL and every GP and every BSR.
Love that idea.
You just hit play.
Not the play part, the assuming that the public knows part.
One of the two. It's not like it's brand new anymore. We've been doing governance for a long time.
I don't think that the public has a clue that they exist for the most part.
It's just brutal listening to the board president get dry mouth trying to read every single policy.
So I'm
Well,
fine with the
that's
pushing
right.
play
Because
thing.
the Survey Monkey doesn't include the overarching statement. That was
Right,
one.
Or when changes happen, because they've happened many times. so
right.
We'll have a change.
It's been caught, hasn't it? Yeah.
I'd be perfectly fine with somebody who likes to record things for the board to go have somebody record all these policies and we can just push play.
There's a student at Desert Oasis that
Somebody with
has a
a-
very pleasing voice that he could maybe do that. Do you know who I'm talking about? I don't know his name.
Especially if they can read fast and you can put it like on a little,
He's a senior.
speed up the tape a little bit.
That's all I know.
I think what you're asking is gonna be a little bit tedious because I'm gonna have to find the correct policy before I play it on the recording. Right?
Or the secretary's gonna have it all keyed up for you and they're just gonna push play.
No pressure.
It's not like you don't know what policies are coming for like
What's the
That's
rest of the
true.
board
a
think?
year ahead of time.
Continue with the board just reading them, to me.
It's brutal.
Do you just not want to hear
Comes
his?
with the job.
Yeah.
I think it's redundant. I'd be okay with just not reading them at all. I was being facetious about the recording part, but
it backfired on you.
I think they should be read, whether it's by you or someone else. I think
Why?
they should be read before each one, because for the most part, I think that the public doesn't understand or know that there's even policies and that we do policy governance. Recently, I had somebody come to me and say, I want to talk to you about this, and I was like, well, that's totally operational, we do policy.
So what if every time before we review a policy, the president makes a statement that's written that says, if you want to read this policy, here's where you find it. You go to the website, you click on here, you click on here, and you click on here, and then you can read it yourself.
I have maybe a different idea. Since it's at the top of every Survey Monkey, maybe I could just skip it and say the policy's written at the top of the Survey Monkey, so if anyone wants to look back at the overarching statement, it's at the top of the
Do we
form.
still have those on YouTube, and are they side by side with what you're
Yes.
reading?
It's kind of small unless you
'Cause
have a big screen TV.
right.
but-
Right. But for the most part, then I would be fine with that.
Ken, would you be okay with just always having it at the top of the Survey Monkey? That way we as a board also could make sure that the wording is correct.
True. I still think it should be read, though, if there was a revision within the previous year to the policy.
And it would say at the top, so we'd be able
Yeah,
to
it does
say last
we do say
revised,
last
so.
revised on here, so.
Sure, I'm okay with that.
Within the last calendar year, then it's read.
Yeah, it's
Then
not
we're
a
gonna have to
policy,
remember
it'd be a
that.
procedure. The
Yeah.
president
gonna have
would
to
just need to
remember that
remember
part.
it.
Based on this
hardest.
last year, I'm pretty sure I should have
Quite
had to
a few
read
of
all of
them.
those then.
Right.
What do you think, Mike?
I want them read, not because I want to go against Tony, but for transparency purposes. I don't agree with Jen that a lot of people don't know this. There might be a few out there that aren't familiar with this. I think most people are, because I get asked the opposite. Why do you guys do all that? But I think in full transparency, if you get dry mouth, we've all got waters, one of us should read the entire
Okay,
thing.
so if nothing else, I'm gonna request this, that when there's multiple policies, that the president read the first one, the vice president read the second one, and we go down the line, so the president doesn't have to do it all.
I agree.
President never complained about it. Here's the great thing about this. I appreciate you watching out for me. first of
Your
all.
reading is brutal, man, I'm just trying to help you.
As the president, I get to do it however I want, so.
Just a suggestion.
All right. So, was there a commitment for action for the next year that we came up with?
None of you guys agreed with it, so.
Is there anything we want to add to that one?
I don't know if we're using board time effectively right now.
We're not. I know we're not. So we're gonna leave that part blank? Okay. That was about 15 minutes. So now we're gonna move on to item E1.
Move to approve item E1-1, GP 7.2, agenda planning revisions.
Got a motion by Director Ashton to approve the revisions,
Second,
second by Director Stevenson.
Stevenson.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Do you want to read that policy?
I'm gonna try to read a policy ever again.
It's long and it's been
Horrible, that is
revised.
terrible. Okay. Item G1, upcoming events. The board has had a chance to look at those, I'm sure.
I'm going to bring this up again. I'm totally confused about what events get in here and what don't. November 2nd's 2-hour late start. November 1st, there's no school, and it's not in there. Why is the late start more important than no school? I don't understand, Mr. President, where these come from and how we decide what makes the cut.
Also, linkage is not in here either.
The last time this came up, the decision was just to let the district decide what's important to put in there. That's what it was left at.
Yeah, I think we should revise that statement.
I think the answer was someone could revise the policy to be really specific about what's in there, but I haven't seen that revision come across yet. It did come across tonight, but it wasn't for that,
Why didn't you fix that too?
because I don't know what you want.
So I just wanted to let the record show, November 1st, there is no school for the board members that maybe don't know.
And now we just changed it to November, so we're not doing the site visit on the 5th.
Yep. It's already
Oh,
changed.
you did change it, sorry, because it says 8 AM to 10. You're on top of it. I wasn't surprised.
Seemed.
I didn't catch it. That's what I was, I guess, more.
Any more upcoming events we want to talk about?
WASDA. I
It's on the
guess
board
that's further
calendar.
out. I know, it's on the board calendar.
Okay, move on to item G2, board self-assessment of meeting. Fastest yet. Okay. The agenda was well planned to focus on the real work of the board. 5 said good, 2 commendable. The board followed its agenda and not allow itself to get sidetracked. 1 said poor, 2 said satisfactory, 3 said good, 1 said commendable. I think we need to talk about that.
Sounds like we have a difference of opinion. I put poor.
I put satisfactory.
Is there a comment we'll read that explains it, or do you want to talk about it now?
I felt like it was the board itself admitted, the board as a whole admitted to itself that it was doing a poor job. So I didn't feel like I needed to put a comment in there as well. It was already
I have a
commented.
comment later on.
Okay. I didn't think we were doing a poor job on following the agenda. It was really about the efficiency part of it. Board's deliberations and decision-making were public. 1 said good, 6 commendable. All board members participated in discussion, no one dominated. 3 good, 4 commendable. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversation. 1 satisfactory, 2 good, and 4 commendable. Under governance principles review, the board actions occurred at a policy level rather than an operational level. 7 said yes. The board agenda referenced policy about each topic that was discussed. 6 said yes, 1 said no. board chair helped the board efficiently conduct its meeting. 5 said yes, 2 said no. 5 were kind. The board supported the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies. 7 said yes. I can't read comments. Want to read? Have we gotten there yet?
We're there. Do you want me to read those? So that you don't
No,
get dry mouth? Oh, I see. I thought you meant you couldn't see them up
This
there. I'm
meeting
sorry,
could
that's
have
what I
been
meant.
run much more efficiently. The chair tried to help have an efficient meeting,
Effective.
effective meeting. We were all a little off. That was kind too. I put the first comment. When it came down to then, new policy, did the board write a new or modify an existing policies during this meeting?
Oh, wait
The
till
answer to that was yes. And then the board started with a broad statement and became more detailed. 2 said yes, 5 said not applicable, because it wasn't a new policy, it was a modification. That's why I put not applicable, but,
Where does it say in there that it only applies to new policies?
I don't think it does, I'm just saying why I put not applicable.
Okay.
Does anyone wanna talk about the yeses? Or is there more comments?
2
coming
people
up?
didn't answer it, right?
No, there's 7 answers.
5 said it wasn't
5 said
applicable.
not applicable. 1 said yes, 1 said no.
Oh, okay. I must not have it updated yet.
I struggle with knowing how I would start with a broad statement, on a policy I'm just revising 2 words on.
To me, it's a statement of, if you felt like that it was incorrect, then you would change it as part of your revision. And since you didn't, and we agreed with you, then I believe that we did. When we first wrote the policy, we started with the broad statement, became more detailed and logical.
So you're saying not applicable, or you're saying yes?
Oh, I'm saying anytime you revise a policy, you should be looking at that same decree. And if you feel like that's not applicable in that policy, you should be recommending to change it. If you feel like there's too much in the policy when you revise it, you should be taking it out, from my view.
Yeah, I agree. And I would have changed the overarching statement, I think I would have answered that differently. The board asked the superintendent to provide his reasonable interpretation of the policy. 1 said yes. This is really interesting. 1 said yes, 2 said no, or 1 said no, 5 said not applicable.
I don't know who said yes, but I don't remember Chris saying a word.
And I think this came up last time, that we wouldn't ask Chris for his interpretation of a GP.
I guess it was a GP, huh?
So that's why I put not applicable out. Tony's not arguing with me, so it must be right. Overall meeting, 1 said satisfactory, 4 said good, and 1 said commendable. Someone was really kind. All of our board items have been completed. Our work is done tonight. Meeting adjourned.